Welcome to Divorce After 50, the podcast where we explore the unique challenges and opportunities for navigating divorce later in life. I'm your host, Shari Frazier. Today, we're diving into an important topic, real estate, and specifically the role of title companies during a divorce. If you're going through a divorce and are wondering what happens to your shared property, this episode is for you. I'm joined today by Annemarie, a closing specialist from Trifecta Title, who's here to explain the role of the title company in the divorce process and offer some practical tips. Annemarie, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Shari. I'm excited to be here and talk about how title companies can help people during divorce. It's a topic I know very well, having worked in the field for a while.
And I think we both agree that the real estate side of divorce can be one of the most stressful parts of the process. I remember when I was helping a friend through a divorce and they were stuck on what to do with the family home. They didn't know whether to sell it, buy out their spouse, or even what that would look like from a legal standpoint. It was overwhelming.
I've seen that happen a lot. It's tough. Real estate often feels like the final overwhelming piece of the puzzle when you're going through a divorce. But in my experience, when people have the right professionals guiding them, the whole process becomes a lot more manageable. I had a client last year who was in a similar situation. She and her ex had owned a home for over 25 years, and there was a lot of emotion tied to that property. But once we sat down, walked through their options, and helped her understand the paperwork, she was able to make clear decisions on whether to sell or keep the house.
I definitely had that personal experience myself. And since I was a real estate agent and have been for 10 years, it was easier. But I do realize that a lot of people don't have that knowledge that I had. So it definitely it's difficult. And I think that's one of the key things, having a clear understanding of the paperwork and the options. So, Annemarie, can you start by explaining what a title company actually does during a divorce?
Absolutely. At Trifecta Title, we handle the legal side of property ownership. When a couple is going through a divorce, we make sure that the title to the property is clear, meaning there are no hidden liens, judgments, or other claims on the home. If one party is keeping the home, we make sure the title is transferred appropriately and that the new mortgage, if there's one, is set up under the correct names. If the property is being sold, we ensure that the transaction is smooth and that both parties understand their share of the proceeds based on the divorce settlement.
I can definitely see how important that is. I had a client once where they didn't fully understand the mortgage obligations when dividing property. The spouse who stayed in the house wasn't aware that they would have to refinance to get the ex-spouse off the mortgage. It caused some tension and delays, but once we got a title company involved, they helped clarify everything and made the transition much smoother.
That's a perfect example of why it's important to get professionals involved early. If the title company is on board from the start, we can help identify any potential issues like the mortgage situation before it becomes a bigger problem.
That, goes speaks to why that I started this podcast, because when I went through my divorce, I didn't know I needed this team of professionals because one party can't really speak to the financial needs or the tax implications, or I could definitely not give them any legal advice, just as you can't. And, it's just very helpful to have the right people in place to give you advice, and they can work together to come up with the best solution for your particular situation. So speaking of getting help early, what advice would you give to someone who's navigating real estate during a divorce? And how do you choose the right title company for your situation?
First and foremost, you want a title company that has experience with divorces. Divorce isn't just about dividing assets. It's about understanding the legal nuances, especially when it comes to property. For example, we've had clients who were unaware that transferring ownership of the home could trigger certain tax implications, or that there might be specific court orders that affect the sale of the home. A company with experience can explain all that in great detail.
Yeah. And, one of the things that people don't realize is that it could be just as simple as somebody's name misspelled.
Exactly.
Or it could be, let's say that you were actually a junior and, the name, it wasn't in there as a junior or the second. It'd just be something as simple as that could mess up the chain of title.
Yep.
You don't run into those things until you're in that situation.
That's right. That's exactly right.
As we've talked about this, these are great points. And it's not about handling the legalities. It's about understanding the bigger picture. I've worked with people who assumed that once the divorce was final, the house would just be easy to sell. And there's a lot more to it. I remember helping someone sell their house after their divorce, and we had to navigate all sorts of issues, like one spouse not wanting to vacate the home right away and needing to work with attorneys to finalize it. Those are not pleasant situations, especially when there are children involved.
Absolutely. I've definitely had clients in that situation. It's a tough one. In one case, we had a couple who was selling their home as part of their divorce, but there was a disagreement about how the proceeds should be split. The court order wasn't clear enough for the lender, so it caused a lot of delays. But by working closely with both the attorneys and the real estate agents, we were able to sort it out. We always make sure to communicate with everyone involved to keep things moving forward.
And communication is key for sure. Because, when you have two people that are at odds with one another, they don't want to communicate as little as possible. Or if they do communicate, it's not very pleasant. And if you can have all your information and your ducks in a row, it makes it a lot easier to negotiate, or your legal team to negotiate on your behalf.
Very true.
For some people preparing to transfer or sell property during their divorce, what types of documents do they have to gather?
The most important documents are the title deed and any mortgage paperwork. If there's a lien on the property, they'll need that information too. I've had clients who were unaware that there was a lien tied to their home because of unpaid property taxes or an old credit issue. Getting title search done early on can uncover those kind of surprises.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of times they're unaware because the other spouse has done something that's caused a lien to be placed on the title, or the other spouse may not have even been aware that it
That's exactly
happened.
right. Yep.
And that's the great thing about title searches is most of the time those are uncovered. People often do overlook those things. I had a client once that didn't realize that they had a second mortgage on the property, and that was a big surprise.
Right. Yep.
Until they did a title search, and it turned out to be a big deal. When it came to the time to divide the property, that's why working with a title company can really help you avoid those surprises.
Well, we're also running in more and more to, we've been told that it's been paid off, but the bank did not send the release.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got to go in and get in touch with the bank to send the release. So that comes up more and more. We always recommend getting a title search done early so you're not surprised by something later. It's much easier to address these issues sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, I'm not sure, but sometimes an appraiser can always uncover some of those liens because they have to take those into consideration too. And definitely, you can't transfer a title out of your name if there's any liens on it that's not been corrected.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people are probably wondering about the financial side of things. What happens when a couple decides to sell their family home during a divorce? How can you handle things like equity and dividing the proceeds?
The first step is to determine how much equity is in the home, the value of the property minus the remaining mortgage balance. If the home is sold, the equity will be divided based on the divorce settlement agreement. But sometimes one spouse wants to keep the house and buy the other out. If that's the case, the title company will help ensure that the buyout process is done correctly and will help prepare the necessary documents to transfer ownership.
That happened to one of my clients. The wife wanted to keep the house, so she had to refinance it to buy out the husband's share. It took a little time, but we got everything squared away once the title company helped with the transfer of title and mortgage details.
That's a perfect example of how important it is to get a title company involved early in the process. We help clients avoid delays and complications, making sure everything is handled properly.
I really feel like that a lot of times that people don't understand anything about what a title really is. It's basically a deed, but the chain of title is like the deeds and the liens and everything incorporated. They don't even have a clue that this is necessary. But getting a title search done early on really does help avoid so many things.
That's right.
I can't emphasize that enough. But there is a cost to that.
There is, yes.
Let's say there's not a mortgage involved or there's not a sale involved. What are some of the specific things that you would do in those cases? Let's just say somebody did a title search. They wanted a title search done. What would be the things that the title clerk would be looking for?
Oh, well, any liens, credit card debt, anything that's been charged off, judgments.
Would they be looking for like past wills where people, if it was a family-owned property?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We've got to look through the chain of title.
Yeah.
And we go back 30 years. So we'll go all the way back 30 years. If you need a search done further than that, it's an extra charge, but on average, it's 30 years.
So what happens, let's say that one of the courthouses and the documents all burnt down and they weren't there, we didn't have that digital age. Have you ever had to encounter that?
It's tough. I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate. And there was a county too that we are no longer able to do business with because they were not filing those documents correctly. So, yeah,
That could really cause a mess.
that is a mess, and it's hard to buy and sell any kind of property in that county. What I understand, they've got a new clerk in there that's cleaning up the mess, but that's been challenging.
Again, I just can't emphasize enough, but I know that there's some expense to that. So is there do you have like a certain charge that's typical?
At Trifecta Title, we try to be very competitive. And right now, for buyers, we've got a settlement charge of $495. And that's pretty much the lowest you can get. And that involves everything excluding
That's good.
owner's title insurance. And that's optional, but I think we could probably do another podcast on reasons why it's important to have owner title insurance.
So let's say you're not really buying a property, but you need to get the title search done in order to make sure that there isn't any liens, that any surprises. Is there a certain price for that? Would it? You're not going to be going through the full close.
I think we've got it now about $150 just to do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's reasonable. You brought up the title insurance, and that's something that a lot of people don't even realize that they can get. So can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So owner's title insurance is nothing like homeowner's insurance. Homeowner's insurance just covers your properties and your belongings. Owner's title insurance covers everything after you've purchased the house, as far as if there's been any clerical errors made at the clerk's office. Scamming and fraud. It's really big, and it's happening more and more, especially on cash deals.
Right. Yeah.
Where people are finding out that their home has been sold and bought, and they didn't even put it on the market. It was never listed. And that's becoming more and more of an issue. So yeah, and there's a lot more factors and issues why you should have owner's title insurance. But like I said, I'd be happy to do another podcast on that one.
And how is that typically priced?
So basically, it just goes by a percentage of what the property value is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this has been incredibly helpful, Annemarie. It's clear that having the right professionals on your side, like a title company, can really make a big difference during the divorce process.
It's my pleasure, Shari. Divorce can be a tough time, but having the right support can really make the process easier and most definitely less stressful.
And so if our audience wanted to get in touch with you, how would they reach you?
Absolutely. You can reach me at 859-402-1986, or you can email me at ANEISZ@trifectatitle.com. That's Neisz@trifectatitle.com.
So as we wrap up today's episode, I encourage everyone to take the time to understand their real estate options during divorce. The more you know, the better decisions you'll be able to make. It's not just about selling or dividing property. It's about making sure you're prepared for whatever comes next. Thank you for joining me today on Divorce After 50. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. I'd love to hear your stories and insights, so feel free to reach out. Until next time, take care, and remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your real estate decisions.